All right. Hey, hi guys. We got to talk about something right now, and it's called critical race theory. And we need to understand something about critical race theory and whether or not being racially sensitive or insensitive has anything to do with whether or not you support critical race theory and the ideas around it. So let's talk about what critical race theory actually is for a second. Critical race theory is the idea of viewing reality and people and government and institutions in society through a lens of equity and materialism. It is a form of morality. It is using the quote unquote moral of equity and materialism to decide whether or not a system and institutions and people in society is just and righteous or evil or not. This is how you get things like white privilege, because it involves breaking things down by race, literally degrading all of us from our personal responsibility and character, the very things that Martin Luther King fought for, to not be judged based on character or on color, on skin color, and rather character, and instead degrades us to using skin color and then therefore looking out across society and institutions and saying, oh, well, these people of a certain skin color have more than these people and they've done better, and that must be because of this institution and because of the system and societal structure and implicit bias, and pick whatever you want. And you use a lens of materialism and equity to claim that the system is evil and therefore it must be torn down and it's wrong and it's bad and it has to be rebuilt around equity and making sure that we have everything for all across the board based on race, not based on character and responsibility. Contrast that with what the Bible talks about, which is personal responsibility and liberty. Yeah, God not only designed the world to be in liberty, which means operating as He told us to, as God asks us to operate, and worshiping Him freely without any oppression. That is what Adam and Eve, the exact environment that they were given in the garden. Yes, they fell. Yes, we've been struggling with that since then, but that is still the way God designed the world to operate, and through Jesus Christ, through the message of the gospel, we are restored to liberty. James 1:25. This is God's perfect law of liberty. We are supposed to be able to worship God freely as He commands us to do, and we are held accountable for our personal character and responsibility. We are shown grace and mercy. We show grace and mercy to other people because we know that they're sinners and they fall and they do the wrong thing sometimes, but it absolutely comes back to who we are and what we do as individuals. Yes, is there a community duty? Do we have a duty to our neighbor to help other people, to be generous? Are there all sorts of commands as opposed to how we're supposed to socially help one another? Absolutely. But the basis of morality and the lens with which we view people in the world is supposed to be from liberty and from personal responsibility and our character, and operating as God commands us to do, which again, through Christ, absolutely involves helping people socially, giving alms to the poor, giving justice to people, which, by the way, justice is supposed to be impartial. We do not use the fact of whether someone is black or white or impoverished or rich as we hold them against the law and assess whether or not what they did is right or wrong. We assess their actions and their character against the law. That is what Leviticus 19:15 talks about. That is why we have to hold just systems of justice that are impartial. And that is what God asks us to do. So critical race theory is the oil to liberty and responsibility's water. They are completely different. They cannot coincide with one another. So that's what critical race theory is. Now, let's talk about racial insensitivity or sensitivity and what that looks like. And then we'll discuss the people that seem to be racially insensitive and whether or not they support critical race theory. And then the people that actually look like they're most racially sensitive and whether or not they support critical race theory. You know what's racially insensitive? Telling black people that they're not black if they don't vote for you or the Democrat Party. You know what's racially insensitive? Comparing the black community to the Latino community and telling them that the Latinos are more diverse in their attitudes and thoughts. You know what's racially insensitive? Playing Despacito at a rally trying to appeal to Latino people. You know what's racially insensitive? Not doing anything to help the minority, low-income communities that are receiving the brunt force of defunding the police, rioting, and mob mentality that is going on in Democrat-run cities across the nation. You know what is racially insensitive? Standing for justice that is partial to people, whether or not they are black or white or poor or rich. Justice systems are supposed to be impartial. It is racist and racially insensitive to be giving people breaks simply because of their skin color in a justice system, such as Joe Biden and the Democrat Party would like to do. You know what's racially insensitive? Monetary policies that destroy the American dollar, destroy the savings of low-income and minority groups, and create large wealth inequality in our country because of the destruction of the dollar. You know who created this? Barack Obama and Joe Biden under their quantitative easing policies from 2008, 2009 to 2017. Jim Rickards in his book Aftermath destroys the fact that they absolutely were the ones that caused the slowest economic growth that we've ever seen coming out of a recession. And it is absolutely the result of their quantitative easing policies and low interest rates, which absolutely destroy the wealth that people have saved up, which most impacts small business owners in minority, low-income communities. You know what's actually racially insensitive? Supporting a theory like critical race theory, which seeks to disparage and label guilt on people simply because of their skin color and their material position in life. So after that list, hopefully it's pretty clear to see that the ones who supposedly support critical race theory and think it's something that needs to be taught are actually the ones that are wildly racially insensitive. Now, to contrast them, let's think about who's racially sensitive. Let's take a look at some of the things that Trump has done. You know what's racially sensitive? Having already come out and condemned the KKK and Antifa and anybody that stands for anything to have to do with racism, as Trump already did in prior videos prior to the debate. You know what's racially sensitive? To be working on legislation called the Black Empowerment Plan, which seeks to label the KKK and Antifa as terrorist organizations and to try to provide economic aid to low-income and minority communities in order to help them climb out of the situations that they're in. You know what's racially sensitive? Inviting one of the first black fighter pilots for the U.S. military to your State of the Union address to be recognized and awarded for their service to the country. You know what's racially sensitive? Deploying the National Guard and other government agencies to help out with rioting, mob rule, and lawlessness in the defunding of police in minority and low-income communities across the nation in Democrat-run cities. It's quite racially sensitive to be the one caring for the people when the governments and mayors that are supposed to be doing so drop the ball in the name of politics. You know what's really racially sensitive? To be standing for the idea of liberty, God's perfect law, which seeks to stop looking at us based on our skin color and allow us to live prosperous lives based on our actions and our characters and our responsibility and participation in good community. Rights such as life and liberty are the things that are memorialized and remembered in statues and monuments across the nation that Trump has sought to protect, the very monuments and statues that some black people already participate in the education and teaching and promotion of because of what was afforded to them through the suffering and trials that they had to go through to get it. And Trump is the one protecting those things. He is the one protecting the right to liberty, where it is those who support the critical race theory and the Democratic Party that actually seeks to enslave black people and have them under their control. Just as we saw with Joe Biden's comments regarding "you're not black if you don't vote for me," and as Jesse Lee Peterson, who is a black reverend and talk show host, talks about how he grew up on what he calls the Democrat plantation because of their goal to enslave the ideology of people simply because of their skin color. It is disgusting and it is wrong and it is wildly racially insensitive. So hopefully we can see now how you can actually be very racially sensitive and know that critical race theory belongs in the trash can, and how you can actually be wildly racially insensitive in supporting such an idea as critical race theory. It actually makes you quite a bit racist to be looking out at people and judging them based on their skin color and where they're at in life. So no, Trump is not being racially insensitive by not supporting critical race theory. And he's also not a white supremacist simply because he did not answer that question the way that you would have wanted him to answer that question. You want to know how that question was a loaded question? Not only did it try to attribute the violence that we are currently seeing in our country, which is largely the result of black groups, Black Lives Matter and Antifa, and their causing of the violence, versus white supremacist groups, which absolutely exist and absolutely should be condemned, but have largely nothing to do with the violence we are seeing, which is what Trump talked about in his answer. And on top of that, in that question was thrown militias. He said KKK, Proud Boys, and militias. You know what's not bad? You know what's not white supremacist? And you know what's protected under our Second Amendment rights? The right to form militias, because that's necessary to guarantee a free state, which is something that we're going to have to start talking about a little bit more, I think, as our nation continues to head down the path that we've been going. But hopefully maybe we, the people, can start educating our neighbor and one another and sharing things such as this content that helps educate people on how to think about and talk about these topics. Because if we, the people, don't stand up, unfortunately, things are going to go the wrong way and continue down the wrong path. So please start speaking up, start embodying this information, understanding it yourself, and turning around and sharing it with others and helping to get the truth out there, because that is what God stands for, and He is behind us if that's what we're standing for. So we can be courageous and brave to do so, and I absolutely am hoping and pray that you do. So thank you for listening. I'm Mr. Nobody. I've really enjoyed this cup of coffee and oatmeal with you, and I hope to have another one with you soon. Take care.